Friends, it is so amazing to see so many activists, so many people willing to stand up for what's right, so many people willing to push back on the injustice that is coming down to Massachusetts residents from the federal level. I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so, so much for showing up today. And thank you. And what I want to do is maybe something a little bit different than what you may have thought I would have started with, but it is so important that we come together like this. I have had so many people say to me, well, what do you go to these rallies for anyways? Do you think that the president's just going to start magically listening to you because you show up in a field and you start chanting? Do you think that that's what's going to happen? And I sit there and I'm not quite sure how to respond in those moments when these people are, pointing and yelling in your face. But what I will say is this, friends. Just because something doesn't happen in this immediate moment doesn't mean that there is not a movement, a wave, building and building and building. And what happens with a wave that starts? It starts just a little, maybe plunk in the ocean starts, and the wave starts, and the movement starts, and it builds momentum, and it builds strength. And that wave that starts off with just a little, tiny, little drop in the ocean can turn into a tidal wave. And what this administration is hoping, and what the naysayers are hoping, is that we will become so demoralized, so disenchanted, so isolated, that we'll stop showing up, that we'll think to ourselves that this isn't important, that we'll question why it matters, that we won't see an immediate result when we leave this field here today, and that next time we'll be less likely to show up, and then the following time we'll be even less likely to show up until eventually we give in, right? But that's not what's going to happen. You see, this administration knows that a house divided cannot stand. And that's what they're trying to do. They are trying to keep this house here in Massachusetts divided, to keep us disenchanted and disenfranchised from each other. We do say no. And by coming together, exactly like what Shaw was saying. Shaw, thank you so much. Courage is contagious. Courage is contagious. Courage is, turn to the person next to you and say, courage is contagious. Courage is contagious. It is contagious. That's why we come together here, friends. That's why we speak to one another. That's why we chant out. That's why we make the signs. That's why we wave the flag and we wave the banner, because courage is contagious. And by coming together in fields like this, in commons like this, to support our shared values, we strengthen each other. We uplift each other. We encourage one another. And God knows we need the encouragement right now. Friends, we know we're experiencing collective burnout. We are experiencing, as a society, collective burnout. We are exhausted. We are separated from each other, and that's what they want. They want that collective burnout to keep us separate, to keep us from coming together like this and standing in unity and emboldening one another. I always think about that courage is contagious phrase there. I think about it in a little bit of a different sense, and it's feel the fear and do it anyways. Feel the fear and do it anyways. Right now, we have an administration who wants us to cower in fear to the scepter that's being waved over this nation right now. To be afraid to speak. Having senators manhandled and dragged out in cuffs for doing their job. Having people who come to this nation seeking a better life, being afraid to go to work, being afraid to go to school. Women and others having to fear losing rights over our bodies. And we sometimes do get afraid, don't we? Sometimes we do. And I know we all want to feel strong all the time, and we all want to feel as though we're not afraid. We're not afraid. But sometimes that fear does creep in. And we think, my God, what is going on in this country? We're in a place like the United States of America. We are fearing that our basic freedoms are under attack by an authoritarian regime with someone who fancies himself a king. We need to stick together. We need to acknowledge and feel that fear, but show up anyways. Feel that fear, but show up anyways. Because there is power in coming together. There is power in speaking out. And we need to continue to speak truth to power. Friends, democracy is under attack from the top to the bottom in this country. And Lorna had me come here today to speak a little bit about that. We have, obviously, everything that's going on at the federal level. But right here in Massachusetts, I, as your state auditor, I am your elected, democratically elected, not appointed auditor, by the way, like what we saw at the federal level. As your democratically elected state auditor, I fought for a ballot question to come before you. Question 1. You may remember this. It was to audit our state legislature. To open up the books, to let the sun shine in, and to make sure that we know how our elected officials are voting. To make sure that we know how our elected officials are spending our resources. To make sure that we, the working class here in Massachusetts, have a seat at the table. And we passed that by a 72% margin. 72% of Massachusetts voters said transparency, accountability, accessibility, and equity. 72% of Massachusetts said the power does not belong solely to the politicians. The power belongs to the people. 72% of you said that's the people's house. That's not the politician's house. 72% of you said those are the people's dollars, those are not the politicians' dollars, and we want access and a seat at the table. And what's happening now is similar to what's happening at the federal level, friends, in our own state house, in our own state legislature, in Boston. We have an authoritarian regime. We do. Now, it is not easy for me to say that and still go to work next week at the State House. But what we have happening here in Massachusetts, friends, is we have people holding themselves above the law, violating the law, and telling the people of Massachusetts that the democratic process does not matter to them. That 72% of this Commonwealth can go out and vote for something, and it doesn't mean a hill of beans to our elected officials here in the state of Massachusetts. I can't think of a better example of a threat to democracy than 72% of the electorate voting for a law and passing it into law, and our elected officials saying, we're just going to break it. We're just going to break it. Because that reminds us of what? It reminds us of what's happening at the federal level. And no one is above the law. No one is above the law. So friends, when I hear the Speaker of the House here in Massachusetts saying things like, with respect to the law, compliance is in the eye of the beholder, I can't help but have visions of what's happening at the federal level trickling right down here to Massachusetts and occurring here. So I am asking you today that as we celebrate, as we come together, as we unify, as we encourage each other and uplift one another, that we also remember that Massachusetts, we're not immune. We're not immune to this threat against democracy here in Massachusetts. And we have work to do. We have work to do in calling folks at the federal level, but we also have work to do in calling folks at the state level to make sure that we do not have kings and queens at the federal level, but also that we don't have kings and queens right here in Massachusetts. Power belongs to the people. Power belongs to the people. Power belongs to the people, not to the politicians. And coming here today, that's what's going to keep us inspired, because courage is contagious. And before I leave this podium today, I want to ask you all, because this is such an amazing thing for us to come together, Lorna and all the organizers and all the volunteers who made this possible, who are keeping us together, who are keeping us empowered, who are helping us to stay strong in this tumultuous time, it is not easy. It is not easy for them to do that. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of energy, a lot of resources, and a lot of hate coming their way. So what I want to do is counter that by sending a lot of love their way right now. So if you can do me the favor of, on the count of 3, to every organizer, every activist, every volunteer, and every friend that showed up today to support our shared values, on the count of 3, let's shout out in the loudest outdoor voice possible. Thank you. Can you do that for me? Can you do that for me? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chelmsford.